like I need wine to be able to complete this video. Okay, let's talk about book buying and specifically book buying for the next few months. I really don't like this conversation, but it's important to have. And I recently had a conversation about book buying with my daughter, one of my daughters, and my partner. And it's clear that there are other people that are affected by my book buying. I think that's always been clear to me to some degree, but maybe in a deeper way than I had anticipated that it was affecting them before. So we recently went away for a couple of days and we were having brunch, and we had been at a couple of bookstores, and I had hauled about 9 or 10 books for the month of August, and the subject of book buying came up. And I tried to be very open to understanding rather than immediately shutting down everything they were saying and not considering what has been happening. But the honest truth is that I need to examine in the next couple of months my book buying or acquiring habits, and how that affects me and how it affects others and how it potentially impacts in a way that I'm not considering. It's interesting because I've seen a couple of other people that I follow talking about book spending and book buying in the last couple of weeks too. So I know I'm not alone, which I guess should be a good thing, but I don't really watch what other people buy. I don't buy because other people buy it. I typically just buy because I see it and I want it. And a lot of times it's an impulsive decision that I make, but sometimes it's pretty intentional, as it was in August. I knew we were going away. I knew we were going to visit several bookstores. I kind of saved all of July from book buying so that I could buy in August, and then I ended up with 10 books. 10 books in a month is a lot. That's more than one a week. And if you think about how many books you can read in a week, if you do that every month, that ends up being similar to the situation that I currently have now, which is I have a lot of books. I don't have room for all of them at the moment, and I'm not getting my physical TBR read. When we sat down and really had an open conversation about it, I could see it from someone else's perspective, which is typically healthy and a good thing to do. So I've created a list of reasons why I might want to consider acquiring and buying books in a different way over the next couple of months. So here we go. Number one is probably pretty obvious for everyone. My shelves are overflowing, and I have no more room in my current bookshelves for any additional books in my house. I have book stacks on my nightstand, on a end table in my library. I have book stacks outside of my shelves. I have book stacks in the spare bedroom, both on the dresser and on the nightstand, in case guests want to read my overflow. I have a book stack on the floor in my library that I think helps me to stay on track of my TBRs. I have a basket of books on top of one of my bookshelves. I have you get it. I have stacks of books everywhere I go. And I have some books, honest to God, in a storage shed. Not a ton, but a couple of boxes of books in a storage shed. Clearly, that's an overflow. And it's happened not so gradually. It's happened really more so since I started this channel and since I felt compelled to be current and to be creating a TBR and to participate in readathons and to read books that other people were recommending on occasion, and just it's more books than I need. So, in the interest of thinking about, I've done a purge recently. I purge through my books a lot, but I have a hard time getting rid of them until I've read them. Number 2, our house is on the market and it is our intention to move. And that means packing up all these books and moving them. And maybe not having shelving in the new house that will adequately support this number of books. I have a vision for what I want ultimately in a new house, but I'm not there yet. I don't know which house that is. And so I'm going to have to pack up and move all of these books. And the more books I acquire, the more books I'm going to have to pack up and move. And frankly, while books are easy to pack and unpack, they're also heavy and they take up a lot of space in the moving process because ultimately you can only put so many books in one box and be able to lift it. Number 3, buying books costs money, and that money could be spent in different ways, like for new furniture in our new home, or for Christmas gifts for others, or for whatever else. I mean, it could be saved. It could be, it doesn't have to be spent, right? Like, not every penny that I take in needs to be spent on books. And we do travel a good bit as a family, and I have a new grandchild coming, and there's just a lot of things that I could be spending money on instead of books that I don't really need. So if I were to take a look at that spending, it could be spent in a different way. There's no question. Number 4, when other people want to buy me gifts, and especially this is coming up now because my birthday is coming up and Christmas is coming up, and when they think about books that they want to buy for me or acquire for me, it's hard to do that when I've already probably bought it for myself or it's on my list to buy for myself. And then maybe there's duplication, or maybe there's just disappointment that they couldn't get a book that they knew I really wanted. My daughter and I are participating in an Advent project, so we're going to give each other 25 books in the month of December and open one a day for 25 days. And she said, it's really hard for me to get Advent books for you when you have been buying all these books or acquiring all these books. That's absolutely valid, and I appreciate that they want to get these books for me and they want to surprise me with books. I love books. I have a list of books that I want on Amazon, and it's hard for them to keep track if I don't get them on Amazon. It's hard for them to keep track of what it is that I already have or don't have because, again, there's so many of them and they're everywhere. And while I might know where each of my book babies live and which shelf they're on, they just don't know that, and they're not able to always come over here and look through them. There's also a feeling on my part and the part of the people that are in my life, my family, my close family, that I'm not reading all the books that I'm pulling in, and that is frustrating both to me and to them, I'm sure. Um, I have tons and tons and tons of books on my shelf on my physical shelves that haven't been read, and some books that I want to reread again. And the more I bring in, the less likely it is that I'm going to get to them. I'm lucky if I can read 5 to 6 books a month. Some months I do better than others, but I have a pretty busy life, and that's a lot of books for me to read. 1 or 2 a week is pretty much all I can handle at most of the time. And that means that I can't even tell you how many books are on my shelf that I haven't yet read. And I don't want to know, I think, because it just feels overwhelming. So I do think that a commitment to reading what I've already brought in this month or this year would be helpful. To really looking at, like, books I got for Christmas that I asked for and I received, I haven't read. Books that I got in the first quarter of the year, I haven't read, and the second quarter of the year, and the third quarter of the year. Like, this is getting out of control, and it makes me feel like I'm not doing what I set out to do and what I want to do. And I want to read all these books. I want to read all the books And I want to have all the time to do that. And if I keep acquiring more books, there's no way that I'm going to be able to dig into that physical TBR. The next reason is, again, to that physical TBR, I am looking at books that I've had and I've acquired for years now, and I haven't gotten to them either. So while I may be acquiring more books now per month than I ever did before, I've still been acquiring books for a long time. You know, when your books are all wiped out in a natural disaster, as ours were, you freak out, and then you kind of start to gradually build and build and build in whatever way you can do that. And then the next thing you know, you've been outpacing your ability to read those books. So for me to read all the books on my physical TBR, I can't even imagine how long that would take. But my physical TBR doesn't get priority when I buy new books in the month. So it could be a better balance, clearly. And I find that, I mean, last week I was cleaning out this cabinet behind me, which is mostly work supplies and, you know, copy paper and different things that I need for work. But there were a number of business books in that cabinet. And I found one I don't even remember buying around the first part of the year. I didn't even remember that I purchased it. It's called Big Potential by Sean Acor. And it was somebody recommended it to me. I think I got it at the end of last year, and I totally forgot that I even had it. That is starting to happen more than ever before because I'm just impulsively buying books. And it's easy to buy books online. There's Book Depository, there's Book Outlet, there's Thrift Books, there's Amazon, there's any number of ways. And Kindle books, I have Nook books, I have audiobooks, I have, you get it. I mean, you probably are sitting here feeling that pit in your stomach if you're listening to this now and feeling the same way that I do. And I said this earlier too. I have books that other people have gifted to me lovingly, and I've asked for them in some cases, or they've found them excitedly for me, and I'm not reading them because I'm buying more books and they're getting buried and buried and buried onto the bottom of the stack. So those are 7 reasons that I can remember that we came up with for me to really take a look at my book buying habit. So next comes, what is the answer? The answer for me is not to deprive myself of options to read what interests me in the moment. Because it's kind of like if I say, well, you can't have chocolate anymore, or you can't have ice cream anymore, or, you know, you can't do this ever again. My brain rebels against that, and I want it even more than I did before. And I will find ways to wheedle around the rule that I set for myself. I have set a no buy limit for myself before, and I have made it through a month or so, but then I feel deprived, and then I feel like I need to rebel against that, and I end up with a stack of 9 or 10 books the next month. I do feel like this is a good time for me to consider this because